I've got to thank my sister Delda for the welcome to country, which is not just a form of words, it's a welcome to country. And we need that, we all need that. We need to be in touch with our country, we need to know who we are responsible to. And my family, Yuin, Bunurong in Tasmania, I live on Yuin land, and it's actually a little bit embarrassing to have all those photos going up there, and because this is not about individuals, it's not about, this is about a national movement toward a better nation. And there's so much has to go right for it, but I think, as has already been said, I think Australia's in the mood for it. And I don't think Australia's been in this mood before. And that mood is created by halls full of people like this, and the patience of the old people, the ancestors, and the descendants of those ancestors who are still here, still living very hard lives because of what has happened in the past. But we can change it. And I'm hoping that what we're doing at the farm, Yumbara, black duck, with central totem of Yuin people, which goes from Malakuta just inside the Victorian border to Wollongong, and the ridge line of the ranges that goes right up to Sydney. That's Yuin country, and you have to admire a people who take as their central being not the lion or the tiger, even though I barrack for Richmond, or the bull, or the alligator, but who take as their central powerful being a vegetarian black duck, a small, inoffensive animal, and yet that bird holds the key to the meaning of all life for Yuin people. Our neighbours, the Gunai, have as their twin totems the blue wren and the emu wren. And I have actually umpired a football game where the Gunai were playing in an Aboriginal football carnival, and people on the side of the ground, you know, big burly black fellas going, "Come the wrens, come the wrens." You know, it has to touch your heart, because the football jumper, instead of having a gorilla on it or a charging bull, had a little blue wren here, and over there was a little emu wren. And this says everything about our culture, this gentleness, this reliance on the small things in our world, all that is to be revered. And I don't want to bang on about red cedar, but it is a metaphor for everything that has happened here and may happen here. That the European mind decided, when the Europeans arrived here, that there was more value in the forest being on the ground than it was in the air. And at no point, it seems, was a decision made to stop. And this happened on Easter Island as well, where every tree on that island was cut down because of antipathy between one brother and another brother, that brother and another cousin, where men were opposed to each other and tried to make bigger and bigger moai, and in a race to their own destruction. And as humans, and yeah, I don't, I don't want to sound too profound because I do barrack for Richmond and we've got a reputation for low-level profundity. But this is not about cedar, it's not about whales, and it's not about grasslands, although that's what I spend my life talking about now. It's about the earth, and it's about people. And while Australia buys enough AstraZeneca COVID shots to inject everyone in the country 3 times, Senegal has none. And while we allow that, then we've failed the human family. And we could explain it away economically. We can explain it away that the third world aren't organised enough, or whatever it is that we blame the third world for. And in this case, our people were blamed for not being human. And that's why our craniums were measured all the time, until it was found that the brain pan of Aboriginal people was slightly larger than the European, at which time that experiment stopped. But that was the only reason that it stopped, because colonialism tries to prove that the people currently on the land don't deserve it. And we are still in a colonial state in the country, but it is changing. Last night, in the gallery, your gallery, we saw a representation of Aboriginal people which was roughly 50% of all paintings, either of Aboriginal people or by Aboriginal people. And that percentage, I don't think, has ever been replicated for the Archibald. And what it is pointing to is a change in consciousness. It is a changing consciousness of a nation, that Australians are saying publicly to their government, we don't believe that crap anymore. We want to change. We, the people, want to change. It is a very profound moment in a country's history. And it doesn't mean that we're going to meet success, but it does mean we're going to try. And with the farm, Yumbara, on the banks of the Wallagarah River, near the town of Malakuta, we are employing other Yuin people to work on the farm, because the foods that we're producing have been so popular, the idea of those foods is so popular, the uptake of those grains and tubers and rushes has been so easy that it made me scared that we would accept these new foods as the Australian cuisine, because, you know, if you're relying on Vegemite as your national dish, then you're only marginally better than the English. And here on the table now is the Australian cuisine. It's our cuisine. It's what our grandmothers and grandfathers caught and cooked and processed. But here is our opportunity. But where in this new industry are Aboriginal people? Because the world is geared against Indigenous people getting any justice. Monsanto and the whole economic system are geared for theft, because they are part of that European mindset. And we have to change that mindset if there's to be justice. And not just for the sake of Indigenous people, although that would be enough, for the sake of our earth. Because the foods we're growing down on that farm, which are being planted and harvested and processed by Aboriginal people, They require no more water than falls out of the sky. They need no pesticide at all because they're adapted to Australian pests. They don't need any weedicide at all because they are perennial plants. And they don't need fertiliser. Fertiliser will kill most of our plants, and we've done some experiments on the farm where we've applied small amounts of fertiliser to our plants to see what would happen, and what happened was they died. They were adapted to Australian soil conditions. So these things are a boon because perennial plants sequester carbon. So as a nation, we can do a lot of things at once. We can improve our food chain, we can improve our soil, we can look after Indigenous land rights, and most of all, we can build soil. Because I don't know how many millions and trillions of tonnes of soil would have gone out at these rivers when the cedar was felled. But that's not the end of the story. It's never the end of the story. There's always a way forward, and our way forward now is to build soil as we build a nation. And I'm very hopeful. I don't think I'm foolish because I move around the country and I hear people, I see the enthusiasm for the acceptance of a different history, the acceptance of different food, the acceptance of looking after the earth, when a lot of our agriculture was designed to pillage the earth. This movement for change is very potent. It's there. And there's a lot to learn. We're not going to do everything right. It would be terrific if we could get rid of hard-hoofed animals for the sake of the earth, for the sake of Australian soils, which aren't adapted to that. It would be good if we ate less meat. It would be good if we ate less in general and wasted less food. But it's not going to happen overnight. There will be sheep in Australia and there will be cattle in Australia for some time. But there are other things we can do. There are marginal farms all around the country now which are converting to growing Australian grains, not because those people have massive hearts and are trying to be necessarily generous to Aboriginal people, but because it is cheap to grow those grains. No extra water, no fertiliser, no pesticide, no weedicide. The biggest line item on most farmers' budgets at the moment is chemicals. You start reducing the chemicals, and because they're perennial grains, you don't need to plough, so you've reduced your diesel, you've reduced tractor hours. All of these things are benefits for us. So we don't have to be totally egalitarian because we know our own hearts. We're not always egalitarian. But this new development is not rocket science for us. It can be pocket science. It can be beneficial to us. It'll be beneficial to our world, and on a number of different levels we can do this. We can benefit from it as an economy. We're not going to destroy our economy. We're going to future-proof our economy. And in doing so, we'll have to convince people in Canberra who wear akubras as a matter of course to show their intellectual credentials, because if you lift the hat off there's nothing there, but with the akubra you look like an Australian intellectual. We can do this as a country, and filling a theatre on a Saturday afternoon when, as was said before, you can be down the beach, is a really potent symbol of an intellectual effort towards a better country, towards a better world. And we owe that, we owe that to our kids, but we also owe it to our grandkids. And a lot of the things that we're doing in the modern world are as if we hate our grandchildren. We despise the thought of our great-grandchildren. We don't want them to have a clean river. We don't want them to have a clean ocean. And we don't want them to eat apples that aren't poisoned by us. You know, these things are, if we could just ask our captains of industry, how much do you love your grandchildren? How much do you want to see your great-grandchildren on this earth down the beach, swimming in a sea not ridden with plastic? We were talking about it at lunchtime today, where we need to talk to 8-year-old kids. And while those 8-year-old kids are so full of the promise of the world and so full of the decency of the human soul, we need to say to them then, you are perfectly correct to have romantic dreams. We believe in your romantic dreams about fairness and equality and every child being able to have a school day, every child being able to have food and the love of their family. We believe in that. We believe in your thought that this is possible. And we need to say to those kids, we want you to hold that 8-year-old thought and that 8-year-old belief when you're 35 and when you're standing over the balance sheet of Qantas Airways and about to sack 20,000 people. We want you to go back to your 8-year-old self. That's what we need, because I haven't been in a classroom of that age group when I've asked questions about how Australia and Aboriginal people and non-Aboriginal people might get together and form a better country. I have not encountered an 8-year-old who thinks it's a bad idea. And they come up with terrific ideas about how we might do it. So I congratulate you. Thank you.